Every time you share your faith with someone, you are fighting for their freedom. Every time you intercede for someone in brokenness and bondage, every time you pray for a lost person, you're fighting for their freedom. This is what Jesus did. Everywhere he went, he told the truth. He did the next good thing. But he didn't just serve others. He served notice on the enemy's tyranny that it could be escaped. Because there's one more thing about Jesus that I think sometimes we don't recognize as quickly. But it was really a part of who he was and what he did. He was a freedom fighter. Go back and look again at those texts I read. Every one of them brought it up. He appointed 12 to have authority to cast out demons. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and to set the oppressed free. He went around doing good and healing all who were under the power of the devil. See, if you walked with Jesus for those 3 years, the people that knew him the best and lived with him knew this about him. He believed that there were spiritual dark forces against him, led by a real being called the devil. Every New Testament author mentions the devil. Jesus did 25 times. In fact, 1 John 3 says the reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the devil's work. Jesus came to enemy territory to confront an illegitimate prince, and every encounter was one-sided. And this is how we explained it in Matthew 12. If I use the power of God's Spirit to force out demons, then the kingdom of God has come to you. If anyone wants to enter a strong person's house and steal his things, he must first tie up the strong person, and then he can steal the things from his house. And this is what Jesus went around doing, binding Satan and setting people free. And he still does. You know, one of our goals is to see a person today surrender to Christ and be baptized. You understand every time that happens, there has been a power encounter in the unseen world? Every time that happens, Jesus and Satan have had an encounter, and Satan has been compelled to release his hold on somebody and acknowledge the sovereignty of Jesus. And our rabbi has commissioned us to continue his ministry of bondage breaking. I remember years ago reading a story about a family in Holland in the late 1930s. It was a Dutch pastor, and his family were hiding Jews from the Nazis, and they got discovered. Middle of the night, they were arrested, crammed into a cattle car, headed to Germany, to a concentration camp. They didn't know if it would be Dachau, Buchenwald, Auschwitz. What they knew when they arrived is they'd be separated and ultimately killed. When they got off the train, though, the men that approached them weren't persecutors, they were liberators. Because the train stopped in Switzerland. Because during the night, someone had courageously tripped a switch and rerouted that train that was headed to perpetual bondage and sent it to a land of freedom. Jesus did a lot of that. And he wants his church to do the same. And a lot of people in our church are freedom fighters. You need to know that. Every time you share your faith with someone, you are fighting for their freedom. Every time you intercede for someone in brokenness and bondage, every time you pray for a lost person, you're fighting for their freedom. All of you that volunteer for Celebrate Recovery are freedom fighters. You ladies in our church that are walking right now with women that want to escape the sex industry are freedom fighters. When you give generously to support church plants and mission works, and we're sending people to some of the most unreached places in our country and in the earth, they are taking good news. They are taking light to people in dark dominion and offering freedom. Be open to the ways that God could use you to be a freedom fighter. I had an unexpected opportunity just a few days ago. I get approached by someone who over 20 years ago had slandered me, said something unkind and untrue. And all these years, they've lived with the shame of their life. And they approached me in tears and asked for my forgiveness. And I can tell you, honestly, in the power of the Spirit, it was just so easy to say, my brother, I forgive you. Please, I'm not carrying the burden. You're carrying the burden. Let it go. Every time you offer someone forgiveness from your heart, you are setting someone free. This is what followers of Jesus do. We spend time with him because we want to become like him so we can do what he did. Because we know our rabbi is also a king. And we're convinced that one day his kingdom is going to cover the whole earth. And that means that anything that we do that was like something he did is going to last forever. I want you to remember when this series is over, this powerful, important truth. Jesus isn't seeking your acceptance. He wants you to apprentice under him because he has a kingdom to establish. And so he invites you to join him and follow the way.